the South Pacific. 16 of those languages have seats on the United Nations. We have the largest mixing of the Pacific here with one iwi. You might get numerically more in, say, Wellington or Auckland, but they're not in all the suburbs. They're not in Remuera, they're in one. But here, everyone's mixed in together, and it's a wonderful place to have that. And that's why a community board here will then bring in the Pacific as well. So it's an essential thing I'm asking for, to form that. 6, I mentioned about my substantive case with regards to not so much the process, but what I understand the Chief Executive Officer should have seen me and said, yes, we will make it accessible for the Tokoroa community to engage in the process of the representation review, and if you want to have the option of the community board, they will be fully informed of what it means and what the benefits and that sort of are. But I feel that some of the literature that has come out about that sort of thing, and I've got a for you today, and you've got it there. I just don't feel that something like that is the best way to engage the Tokoroa community. You're wearing a dress today that looks very Pacific Island. You'd fit in well in Tokoroa. But that's the sort of thing I would expect on the front page of a representation review. But this is, from a PR perspective, is not what I would have led with. And so, from my perspective, a lot of people perhaps would have not read the document just because of the way that it's been presented. So, because you've said you want to get what is fair and effective representation, I don't have to go into what I feel are those biases that have culminated in not a fair process. I will leave it across to you. $300,000. I'm happy for a community board in Tokoroa, but I want that community board not to be isolated. I want them to have peers in those other areas so they can interact with the farming or the water supply. And so the reason for asking for 48 is so there's 12 out by the dam. There is 12 at Tirau, there is 12 at Patauru, and when they caucus and have 48, they're able to share the town's problems, and then when they represent that to the full council, they're getting a much better balanced view, because it's very easy for the mayor to go to China or to the ambassador of Japan. It's very hard for an individual to go to those heights, but then also to try and deal with some of the Decile 1 issues. And I'm just saying a community board of 48 people will help the council negotiate those big challenges that only this district has because of its Pacific Island population. So I'm asking for 48 so we don't leave behind just Tokoroa's community board. They have peers in the same district they can work with and caucus with. That's very important for my request for $300,000 a year. So I want to thank Bruce for coming along today and the others that we have here. So I've said my piece and you've taken, so I don't need to go back over that. I have said that the inexperience of the Chief Executive Officer is something that, from my perspective, the first Chief Executive Officer, you want to leave that? Okay. So that's the 8th point. I know it is. I've just got the time running here and I've got 44 seconds to go. The 9th point was about the Chief Executive Officer again and the interaction with elected members, but I'll leave that aside. That's something we can talk about later. 10 is reiterating 48 community board members and talked about the richest person. We've got a legacy in New Zealand of 30%. It's just come out of people who are in poverty, the kids, driven by adult poverty. Sue Bradford spoke about it on the news. We need these community boards so we can address those issues. I'm happy for the mayor to go to China and Japan and work with OSZM, but we need 40 because we've got real big needs in Tokoroa and the wider area for harmonisation of the resources we have here. It ends my submission. Can I turn this up? Okay.
Just a quick question from me.
Sure.
You're asking for community boards that are actually larger than the council is. Can you explain to me why you need 12 and how successful you believe the community would be of putting up candidates to be on community boards?
I have been interested in promoting good candidates. So at the last election in Tokoroa for the council, there were 16 candidates running for the 6 positions. I didn't work on Te Rau or Pataru ward, which is 4 there. And so one of the candidates I ran a month before nominations even opened with posters and stuff, and that drew lots of interest and stuff. And so that's from my background. I used to be the student association, postgrad student association president for Waikato University, also on the student association there, was on the alumni board with Jim Bolger and people like that with regards to 100,000 catchment, have been a youth counsellor under Les Mills in Auckland, and we had a catchment of 300,000 youth. So the governance side of that, from my perspective, is something that I'm used to. So it was nice to try and get that swelling. But I feel that a community board, and as much, because the community board can only make recommendations to the council, and that's where the safety net is. It's not a challenge, but it allows some people to just get the wind under their wings. And I went round Southland and I met with community boards there, and I just found some wonderful talent in the community boards, people that would easily slot in to full council. You know, and so with a little bit of encouragement. So the community boards are a great maturing ground for people that can then try it out, and then if they need to come up. And that's why we need them in the rural areas of those, as well as in Tokoroa. That's my answer.